I'm gonna real quick jump to our first polling question for our audience, and then we'll get back to the audience Q&A and move ahead. But this question is for you listeners. What's the primary driver of your company's interest or investment in mechanistic modeling and digital twins? Choose one: pre-capital deployment optimization, optimization of existing processes, process development efficiencies, pre-scale-up modeling, tech transfer, or other. Obviously, we've touched on a ton of applications already, many of which are not on that list. So I anticipate that the other column might catch quite a bit of interest. But go ahead and respond to that poll. We'll take a look at that in just a second and move on. In the meantime, does our panel have any guesses, any prognostication around which one of these might lead?
I would guess the efficiency piece, because we've been hearing a lot about optimization and efficiency in general. So I would say process efficiency, or I'd rephrase it not just as development, but process development and maintenance efficiencies is probably going to be a big catch here.
Yeah,
I agree with Shruti. Optimization, efficiency.
All right, Miles, let's take a look and see what's leading.
What should we can say? Oh, wait, that's a different question. Never mind.
Looks like process development efficiencies and optimization of existing processes. So you guys were spot on.
All right.
Spot on. Hooman, before I jump to the audience, the polling question there, I think you were gonna follow up on something that Yuanyuan was talking about.
I don't recall if I was gonna follow up on that. Is there anything specific you want me to point out? There is a question that I would like to pick. Is that okay?
Yes, please do. Yeah, if you guys see questions in the Q&A box, just jump on them.
Yeah, so actually they are all relevant questions, and then we can talk about each of them for hours, to be honest. But
how much time do y'all have?
Michael's question is about, here's a question: how much is AI adding to the accuracy of digital twins? We touched on AI a little. Here's the thing, Mike. It very much depends on the problem statement. So if your mechanistic understanding and mechanistic models are sufficient enough, there's perhaps not much for an AI model to add to the solution that you're offering. However, if you lack there is just a lack of understanding from the mechanistic from a mechanistic sense, then that's when you want to add an AI or machine learning layer. Here's the catch though. If you're trying to add a machine learning AI, now that you have to make sure that you have the relevant data that is suitable for training and validating your AI layer. So that is correct that there is a vast amount of knowledge from mechanistic models in a lot of cases, but the reality is that in a lot of cases, that vast mechanistic knowledge does not exist. And you need to add that statistical layer and couple it with your mechanistic models.
I agree with parts of what you're saying, Hooman, though, from the perspective of, yes, if the mechanistic model is very well explained for a particular device or for a particular process or unit operation, great, you start there, obviously, always, right? Because this simplest method of answering a question is always the right way to start. However, what I would disagree with is essentially that not with the current developments with AI and machine learning models, right? Like there are a lot of machine learning models where you can actually introduce simulation methodology to improve the volume of data that you can use for training and validating the machine learning models. And some of that is very, very commonly available in sort of other application areas outside of pharma manufacturing or bioprocess manufacturing. And if you look at IBM's technology, and there are a lot of other researchers who are now starting to include physics-informed mechanisms beyond just the mechanistic modeling approaches to identify sort of, there are Bayesian approaches, for example, that do not require a lot of data to start with. So that's one thing I do disagree with. And then the second part of my perspective on this is also that a lot of the times what we're doing is, like Ramila mentioned earlier, we're customizing these mechanistic models for a specific program and for a specific drug development process. In which case, even if you do have a model, mechanistic set of equations that can describe what is happening in a unit operation, it may not necessarily be comprehensive enough to what happens in the process of what you're developing. In which case, it always does become important to add the data-driven and the statistical modeling piece automatically, at least in my perspective. However, there's a range of what you can classify as AI and data-driven information that can be included there. You, again, from the perspective of if you have a mechanistic model, start with the mechanistic model. With the machine learning methodologies, you can always start with simple data-driven insights to inform mechanistic modeling and utilization of certain specific equations for certain things, right? So there are different levels of inclusion that you can, and sort of ensemble that you can provide for these things. However, there are methodologies and technologies which are developed within the AI space that do not require a huge amount of data. Answering Michael's question specifically, how much is AI adding to the accuracy of digital twins? I think that's a wide-ranging question. There are certain limitations, especially for DOEs and multivariate models, in the sense of, obviously, there's money constraints, right? Not everything can be answered by a DOE because you need to spend the money to actually develop it, run these DOEs. And so that's where simulation methodologies and data augmentation technologies come into play, where you can use those to improve the accuracy of digital twins overall. So there is a significant impact for using AI within the digital twin space.
I want to thank you, Shruti. I appreciate that, and I want to give Ramila the floor right now, because he's our global head of process data management, ML and AI platform, and he's been waiting patiently as this AI discussion has played out. So I'm certain that he's got something to add to this part of the conversation.
Yes, sure. I mean, I think I agree with everything that was mentioned here. One thing that excites me is about how do we apply these digital twins in shop floor, in manufacturing settings, right? So, and in this regard, I think most of our digital twin and mechanistic modeling applications are mostly limited to process development. What really makes it make it generate the value out of these digital twins is if we can apply it in manufacturing settings. And somebody asked the question about how do you reduce the PPQ runs using digital twins. So it's not about really reducing the PPQ runs. You probably need to have the PPQ runs, those 3 PPQ runs that you need to have, but how to get there faster. So you probably need to do engineering runs before PPQ runs. And can you reduce those engineering runs, right? So speaking to the question about, can you get your product to the market faster? If you built in 10 engineering runs in your schedule, can you adhere to those 10 engineering runs, not going more than 10, or can you do it with 5, right? So digital twins can really help you to get to that sweet spot where you should be operating your PPQ runs. So you can actually use digital twins or mechanistic models to try and reduce your engineering run, so that if you had planned for 10, you may end up with 7, or even better would be, if you plan for 10, you stick to 10 without going more than 10. So right? So that's a real true capability. So coming back to how we apply this in the manufacturing settings so that's where sort of I like to link my background, right? My background mostly is in the data management and data system. And right now we are thinking about how do we bring mechanistic models or digital twins into the shop floor. What needs to be done? right? I mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, what makes digital twins is really being able to make that models relevant, current, or let's say personalized to a given operation. And the only way you can make that is really through data. You have to tweak, or you have to adjust your models to follow a given unit operation. So the data access is needed. Most of the time in the P&D process development space, we have our data in Excel files, in a rudimentary way of managing data. But that works for the process development. But for when it comes to manufacturing side, you have data coming from different systems, manufacturing execution systems, process historians. So having that data layer ready and contextualized so that you can use that data and feed that data into these models is fundamentally important, right? Just like you have sensors in your smartwatch. These are configured to capture data from your body, right? These are ready to use. So ready to use data is really foundational to make the mechanistic model digital twins industrialized, right?
Can
So
I
that's one
add
one.
to something, Ramila? I mean, perfect. I mean, that was really a very, very important point that you raised, and I understand that your concern is mainly around the manufacturing and GMP space. Within the development space right now, as we speak, that also we have realized that in order to implement digital twins successfully, we need a very strong support system. And a big part of that support system is a strong IT infrastructure.
Yeah.
How do we collect data? How do we standardize them? How do we store them? How do we extract them? Right? And if we don't have access to this piece, regardless of the application, regardless of doing you just wanting to do a mechanistic or a statistical driven digital twin, it's going to be extremely challenging. So that's one of the main important prerequisites, in my opinion, for long-term success when in this space.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think.
agree. I agree. I think what I meant to say was you can do with different level of data maturity with process development space, but you cannot do without it. You must have data, uh, the standard contextualized data in manufacturing, so that you can run these models or implement these models. So that's sort of the biggest lever. I agree. Like if you have everything organized, that's perfect, and that's where we should aspire to. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, now we talk about how to personalize these models, how to personalize these digital twins. The other part is now to how do we use this in the control setting? Can we run a digital twin? Can we simulate the process? And can we do the feedback control using these digital twins? So again, to this aspect, even in the lab space or in the manufacturing space, the data connectivity is important. How do we need to ask ourselves the question, okay, we are executing a mechanistic model or digital twin, and the results that we get, how do we use that data, that results, to control our manufacturing process if the desire is to control, right? So again, for manufacturing settings, going back to manufacturing, because ultimately our goal should be to use this digital twin in where it counts most, which is manufacturing, right? To industrialize, uh, how do we set up, systems, data systems, you know, uh, to make that these capabilities can access data right away, and plug into data systems like Historian, and then also orchestrate these models or run these models in a system where it can talk to the control layer if the desire is to control, right? If the desire is to monitor, then again, the output of these models has to go to some sort of a data management system like data Historian, for instance. This, we need to think about implementation in a more holistic way, as opposed to just focusing on developing a model or developing a digital twin, which is important. But again, and if the goal is to industrialize, the goal is to get the benefit out of it, the full benefit. We have to have a more holistic view.